Hiring a team challenges you to enhance your skills as a business owner, and it is just like implementing flat fees and project pricing. Really, these kinds of strategies help elevate your business to a level where this sustainable growth and scalability are achievable.
Welcome to the Damn Good Designer podcast. Join hosts Cheryl and Liz, the visionary and integrator balancing all the moving parts of a full-service interior design firm. Get ready for a wild ride as they challenge the norms, challenge the industry, and challenge you with damn good truths about what success looks like today. Now your hosts.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Damn Good Designer podcast. Liz and I are here today, and we are going to talk to you about a subject that gets brought up quite a bit in our TDP classes. And also, I'm very happy to say that sometimes people bring this up because they have gotten really busy after they go through the business model and they're starting to really hit the ground running. We have had a lot of designers that have gotten really busy, and they're asking me the $1,000,000 question. How do I know when it's time to hire? Whether it's your first assistant, your first designer, your first anything, your first person that's just helping you anyway, or whether it's your second or third or fourth, people are always asking this question. So we thought this would be a great subject today to dive into just a little bit about what you need to think about. And it's timely for us because we just hired somebody new. She started a couple of days ago, and that's great because we've been down a person and we're really excited to have her. She actually has a little bit of experience in this role. She is going to be an assistant to us. And when you work for In Detail, you do a little bit of everything. We certainly have defined roles, but it's a little bit of everything. And so, we're going to talk just a little bit about that. And again, how do you know when it's right to hire? And gosh, Liz, I mean, that is like a $1,000,000 question. I might regret doing the podcast topic around this because I think for a lot of people, I'm very methodical and metrics oriented on it, but I think Liz is more of the sense of, because she manages more of our workflow and the overall. So I'm looking at it more academically, I guess, in a way. And then Liz
More
is looking at it more
strategically, probably.
yeah, a little more strategically maybe, but also the reality is sometimes you may not be ready when you think you are ready to hire a person when it's not just that first one. Don't you think, Liz? I mean, you start us off here and give me your input on this, because I know neither one of us love interviewing or doing any of that kind of stuff, but yet
Does
it's
anyone?
something that we have to do. I mean, we've got a team of 8 now, 8.5 really, when you count Miles in there. And boy, I have to tell you, Liz, as an aside to everyone, Miles is a school teacher now. He has worked for us off and on for years. And he today was so excited when you sent him out to that install with Gabrielle. He was sitting there in the very hot, sweaty tile department, which is our attic. And it's very hot right now here. And he was so excited, saying that he saw a plug that wasn't in the right spot, and he was doing this, and he was pointing out this and pointing out that. And I'm telling you, we might have missed his calling, Liz. We might have missed his calling when he was working for us before. But it was really cute. And he brought up a lot of really good points. So anyway, this is not the Miles show. So we're not talking about that, but I just remembered that because I was talking to him right before I came here. But tell me about, like before we hired Althea, we really did talk a lot about different things. I mean, so why don't you expand on that a little bit before I get into the more of the strategy part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that something that we always, well, I guess it kind of goes both ways. We've gone through phases where we've kept an ad out because we felt like, we wanted to kind of keep a beacon out there in case anyone came along. But we've also gone through phases where we don't have anything posted and where people just kind of show up at our doorstep. It's not as common that happens, but it does happen sometimes because we're not right near a feeder school necessarily here in Pensacola. But I feel like one of the biggest things anytime this topic comes up, because we do sometimes throw it out there and then the conversation sort of fizzles. It's like we either get too busy or we decide like, maybe we don't need it, or maybe we don't want to deal with the hassle because it is a big undertaking. But I think that something that has been really prevalent in the trends that we've had over the years when it comes to times when we do hire is sort of this feeling like we have the capacity to take on another person. And I
Mhm.
think that from Cheryl's perspective, she looks at it as like, how can we kind of cater to some of these bonus projects or the way that the team is developing in terms of like an upward mobility for other team members where we need the extra support to really help push that along. So,
Yeah, that's a
Cheryl,
really
I know
good
that
point.
it's kind of
That's a good
hard to
point.
probably predict, obviously, but let's talk a little bit about that maybe. Like what is the sort of bonus to thinking about it from that vantage point in terms of how a person can help you grow before you're maybe ready on the top end of your existing team?
Well, I definitely think, and I've said this for, uh, gosh, years and years now, that designers don't hire soon enough. I really think that they wait until you're, wallowing in misery and too much work and too much this, too much that, and you're just like going, "Oh my god, just Calgon, take me away," type of deal, and you haven't really set yourself up for success or the person up for success. And I think what you're talking about, but correct me if I'm wrong here on what you were saying, is that you're asking more about how we're using it to move other people up. Is that correct? Is that
Yeah.
what you're
Yeah.
saying here on UV? Okay,
Yes.
so and that's what we just did when we hired somebody,
Right.
is that we felt like Libby was taking on a little bit of a role of more as the lead designer now, because Liz isn't physically here, even though she's still very involved in design as I am. But Libby is a lot of the groundwork and a lot of the impetus, I guess, the match to us, the match to get the design team going. And then she was doing some other things as well, because she, started the candle studio and she was doing some of the billing things because she wanted to learn more about it. But it was really just taking over. I think she has a newfound respect for Mackenzie's role, to be honest.
Yep,
She asked me
she
yesterday
does.
if we could hire Mackenzie back, so that was pretty. I thought Mackenzie will love to hear that, because she never felt like she was fully appreciated, in that role. And Livy said that to me yesterday. And I said, I think I want to tell her that. But
That's
um, but
amazing.
so we really needed Libby to have more time. And then we wanted to also bring Miranda up into the more in the business office, and for her to learn more about what was going on
Right.
um, with other things. And she was doing so much of a little bit of expediting, and I'll explain that in a minute. A little bit of managing the warehouse and all that. And really, Liz knows more about that part than I do, because she's the one who was really supervising on that end. But we felt like Miranda was ready for a move, kind of a lateral move in a way, but with the opportunity now to move up also, which is, I think, what she wanted as well. I mean, her and Gabrielle both have different strengths and weaknesses, and different interests and all that. And I've always been a big fan of you have to fill the need. But I have always wanted to hire somebody that I, first of all, liked, because it's a small business, but secondarily, somebody that could could move into a role that they're very happy in. And so, as long as
Right.
they're not wanting my job or something, although there's days that I would be happily give that up, then it's always been something like, hey, I mean, what are you good at? Let's figure out how that might be, what your skills, how that can translate to what we're doing. Now, that is not necessarily your first hire, but I think that's what you're talking about, right? In terms of the moving up of people,
Yeah.
and wanting to give
I mean, it's
them.
like a different sort of growth, it's a growth from within in addition to sort of thinking about the bigger picture, obviously.
That is what I would say is the best part of hiring, is when you can make it upward mobility for somebody else. But that's not really necessarily addressing how when you are ready to hire. And to me, that is, I think that Liz would look at it more of the workload, and what she was talking about with moving somebody up into another role. But for me, I'm looking at it from a monetary standpoint also. Can we afford to hire somebody? And sometimes you have to ask, can I afford not to hire somebody? Honestly, I mean, that is really like an important part of this, is can I, can I afford can I afford not to hire somebody? And so, I look at it that, I mean, the conventional wisdom is, I think, 15 to 30% of your gross revenue should be, having to be, part of salaries or payroll or something like that. I look at it more of revenue in general, maybe $250,000. So if you're at 250, then you haven't hired somebody, then you should be looking. If you're at 350, you probably should have been looking already. But I also think you should look at it in profit. Profit is the name of the game for me. So it's not just about revenue, because you could be doing a lot of remodels and selling a lot of product that's tile and things like that, where the margins aren't as good as furnishings. So it's not looking at things revenue based only is really a little bit of a disconnect in my world. So I usually look at profit. So I think if you're bringing in $125,000 of gross profit per person, including yourself, then you're looking good. So if you're bringing 250 of profit in, I think with two people, I think that's a good thing. That's where you probably need to be, depending on your overall overhead. So these things are so vastly different in terms of what every person needs, because every person's overhead. If you're working out of your home and you have somebody next to you and you're in your basement, your overhead's going to be a lot less than, say, mine or somebody else that's in a studio. I
Right.
don't know what else. What else do you think from a perspective of the workload, Liz? I mean, I think you have to have all your processes together, but of course, I'm going to say that things
Yeah.
have to be well documented so that people know what's going on. But talk to me about, like, I don't know what you're doing with Althea right now. I haven't even looked at a list or anything, and she's been there now for 3 days. So talk to me
Yeah.
about it from that perspective, as to, when I came to you and said, hey, maybe we should, somebody lands in our lap. We weren't looking to hire. And somebody landed in our lap, and we really liked her repartee and the emails and stuff. But what really, I don't remember what pushed us over the edge in terms of hiring her, even though we need to get back to what it's like to hire that first person. Let's talk about a
Yeah.
little bit about this situation, because a lot of people out there listening do have more than one employee now, and they're probably really, that's the struggle bus, is when you have more than one already and you're looking to hire the third or fourth or fifth. To me, that's a lot
Right.
harder than knowing when to hire the first.
Right. Yeah, because you've got a big operation to handle, and you got to take care of everyone in addition to this new body. And we're all busy. I think that's really been the biggest thing the last couple days, is that it's like, okay, what sort of tasks do we each do that can be trained along with the task being done, so that we don't totally lose all productivity out of this already shortened week. Libby and I kind of had a little powwow on Monday morning, just to get our ducks in a row and figure out, like, okay, what is it that needs to be a priority so we can get Althea up and running as quickly as possible. And in addition to that, really thinking, just like you said, about how is her role going to best contribute to what the needs are of the whole office, and what is she going to be able to offset
Hmm.
to make all those other things happen. So I think that when we were in the process of interviewing her, we knew that she had some experience in the industry with furniture sales, which the sales part is a nice little bonus, because obviously anywhere in what we do, that can be a benefit, having that sort of comfort interacting with clients, and the comfort working with vendors, and sort of having a sales perspective in general. But I think the
Hmm.
other thing that we saw as an opportunity with her is that she had, enough experience to have a baseline, but not so much where she would be looking and sort of coming in with bad habits, maybe. So when it comes to being able to figure out where she fits in our larger team, it wasn't that there was a really strict trajectory that her role needed to take. And I think that that kind of speaks to the conversation too, about when you're looking for someone, what is it that they need to be able to offer you? Like, what are the skill sets that you're looking for? What do you want to hear when you're talking to them? And I know that you look for different things than I look for, even when it comes to
Yes,
those
but that's
conversations.
important. That's important to have
Right.
that balance with
Right.
what I'm looking for and what you're looking for, because I'm really looking more for a person. And because you are in charge of executing things and you're like the second in command, you are really looking for more specific skills that we either lacking or that we need more of, or whatever, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that, we do kind of a multi-step process too when it comes to the interview process. But between my conversation with her and Libby's conversation with her and your conversation with her, I think that we identified that she had the capacity to do some of the basic things that need to get done, and that would really need to be understood by everyone on the team. And then we looked at it from the vantage point of, what is her involvement going to allow or free up when it comes to
Right.
resources for other things. So
Right.
it really, it really did kind of then help us look at the bigger picture. And I think that's probably some of the difference. You can speak more specifically to this, obviously, because I've never known us to only have one person. I've only
Person,
ever
right?
known us to have a team. But being able to look at it from like, how are all the cogs working, as opposed to, okay, I'm about to like make this. I feel like I've got this breakthrough moment. I've got enough business lined up, and I think I need another body to make some of this happen, type of thing. I know you've always had a team, essentially. You started out that way, which I think is kind of unique.
Mhm.
And I think that does probably help speak to when people come to you and they say like, am I really ready?" You're like, "Yeah, of course you are," because,
Yeah, of course you are.
at
That's what
any
I'm always
point.
gonna say. Of course you are. But the truth is that I knew that I wasn't gonna do all that work because I'd already been in management, and I was like, I'm not doing all that extra work. I'm not doing all that work. I'm not doing all the I can't be the creative genius and do all the things that I have to do and also run the company, because I was never gonna outsource that because I'm a business person. I've always been a business person. I was a business person in 5th grade selling a newspaper. So I've had so many businesses over the course of my time that no way was I going to be outsourcing that. Not that there's anything wrong with outsourcing that. If you're not good at that, then, I want people to know enough to make sure you're not getting screwed and that people are making good decisions for you. But I don't outsource that because it's what I love to do the most. But I did know that going into it. So I think I had barely started when I hired Kara, and she was my right hand for maybe 2 years, and then we hired again, and then again, and then again, and then we've never really looked back. We've actually had up to, I think, 9, maybe 10 people at one time or another doing
Yeah.
different things, maybe a couple of them part-time or whatever, over the years, even before you got there. It's but yeah, I've always known that I was going to need to have help doing things because I had big plans. And I think that's part of it, is to think about, when we get back to really thinking about what it is that you have to do, is really being honest about where you are now, brutally honest, lay it out in writing, make sure that you know exactly what kind of money you're bringing in and what is on the horizon and that sort of thing. You don't want to compare your business to somebody else, who's further down the road, because it's not a competition. And this may not be something that really is applicable for you and your business, because your makeup of income and profit may be different than somebody else's. I definitely would determine what the next level looks like for you. Like, where are you going? If you're at level 1.5, what's it going to be to get to 1.8, 1.9, 2.1, et cetera? What does that look like for you? And what, kind of visualize where you need to be money wise on that, as well. And, and set forth those actions, really think about that, get all this in writing, and then be very specific and actionable so that you know what you're doing. And if one of those things is hiring somebody, because you can't do it on your own, you simply can't, you really can't. And I think that if you are, if you're hiring somebody because you are drowning, you might be uh, actually being not as wise about it as it is to slow down maybe for a hot second and get your act together with it, and making
Yeah.
sure that you understand how your financials work, making sure that you have 3 months of a potential higher salary in the bank set aside. That's really important to me. If I'm working with somebody and they want to hire, I'm like, okay, you've got this projected, you need to set some money aside, just like you do for a rainy day on your personal life and that kind of thing. You've reached that over 250 of revenue, a combination of product sales, fees, whatever. I prefer to look at it like that you're in between 125 and 250 of profit, honestly, before you're starting to hire somebody, depending on what you're comfortable making. And that's the other thing too, is that I want to be very honest here, is that I did not, my first 6 or 7 years in business, was not making a fortune by any stroke of the imagination. And I do sometimes counsel designers that are saying, oh, I want to make 150 grand, in my first year, my second year, or this is year 3, and I think I should be making 200 grand a year. And I'm like, really? Have you read any of those surveys that talk about this? Because that's really not realistic for a lot of people. Now, if you can do that, more power to you. And if you're doing a lot on fees and you're doing a certain type of business, and you're a certain type of climate, meaning location, that all may be good. But for me, that wasn't the case. Okay. That wasn't the case. And I put money back into it. So I didn't take all that money out. I'm not a profit first person, not that I disagree with in general. I just don't, first of all, I don't think you have to have 17,000 bank accounts to run your business. I'm just telling you. And I'm a business person. So I'm here to say you don't need to do that. There are other ways to manage that without having a bunch of reconciliations to do every month, and to not think about your growth. Because one of the things about profit first that I disagree with, and I've had discussions with the people that are disciples of this, also, is that it really kind of stymies your growth a little bit. Because honestly, if you're really in a growth mode like I have been, and I have achieved phenomenal growth over the years, phenomenal growth. I am not a coach and business strategist that's sitting here and not having done anything and not actually doing the work. Okay. Yes, I have a team, but I'm still involved in it every day. I'm, quite frankly, like to be a little less involved sometimes, but I am definitely involved in everything that we do. And I'm still very much involved with clients and all of that. And so the difference is that sometimes business coaches that are not really that involved don't really understand what it's like to be in those trenches. And I think you have to put money back into it. So if you're making X amount of money and you need that, you need to understand what that number is for you, so that anything over that you can invest in somebody else. And people are your best capital investment for certain. I mean, I feel like right now we have a really awesome team, and I feel like I really want to protect that. I want to make sure that we are super careful, about making sure that we foster their growth in areas that they want. But I do think that everybody needs to consider that if you want to grow, then you are going to have to hire somebody. And I don't know that there's any way around that, because it is just everything we do in our industry is taxing us more and more in terms of our energy. And
Mhm.
that is a recipe for burnout. I mean,
Right.
I think, to me, it's super important. Like, that consideration of when you need to hire, you just have to make sure that, that you are ready, in the sense of having those processes at least fairly well lined out, having some money set
Mhm.
aside for that person, and have some stuff on the books, and really understanding there's there's a difference between training people and actually managing people. I am a terrible manager. I suck at management. I am god awful at it. I am just the worst ever, but I am a good trainer. And that is a very different thing. And I don't think people always, recognize that you need to have both. If you're hiring your first person, you need to have both of that. But that second person and that third person definitely can take over some of the other roles, like Liz has done, with us.
Yeah. I think that it's good too to keep in mind, and I mean this is the case obviously across the board because everyone's company is a little bit different and the way that they're going to want to run it is a little bit different. But I think that it's really valuable to think outside of the box a little bit when it comes to a new hire and what they can potentially do for you. Because sometimes the thing that you think you need in one moment might shift a couple months down the road, and sometimes just like you said, the person who you hire might grow into a different role that you weren't expecting them to because of their skill set or because of a way that you want to pivot your company. But being open to that and really kind of aware of it, that is probably one of the
Yes.
more challenging parts. I think is the value in seeing what a team is capable of, because I think that's why we have such a strong setup right now, because we've kind of allowed for that to happen. We've hired people who have a good attitude, who have a good work
Hmm.
ethic, who are good with people, and kind of watch them to see what they can do within the confines of what we need, of course, but then catering some of their responsibility and the things that they take ownership over more towards their skill sets that we can see as strengths
Right.
versus weaknesses.
Yeah, and asking people what they like to do, and what part of their, I mean, no one likes every aspect of their job. I mean, let's face the facts here. No one does. I don't, Liz doesn't. I mean, none of us do, So I like to know what people like to do and what they don't, because a lot of times what I don't like to do is something that somebody else enjoys doing. I mean, Gabrielle is having a field day. Well, I don't know, because it's awfully hot there. But she is really was looking forward to doing this install that she's doing today alone. She's really basically doing it. Well, I mean, she's got Daniel there, but she is basically doing it alone, because we had to get it done. It was right before the holiday and we're off, Thursday and Friday. Yeah, so she had to get it done. But I think that she really is gravitating towards that. And I'm thinking like, oh, thank the good Lord, I don't have to go out on that install. I don't mind going out after the end of it or going out tomorrow or not tomorrow, but sometime next week. But it's not something that I really love doing. But then you find out that other people, like she loves being with people and loves, doing all that social stuff and all of that things that I'm just like going, yeah, no, it's not for me. So let me talk about a few things, Liz, and then we can just really hone in on a few things I think that are important. Okay. So am I like, top 10 or 5 or whatever it is, however many I have here, of things on what to do and what not to do. I would say one of the first things is not to hire someone who wants to be you. So when somebody, emails us and says, and we had this just the other day, I want to be, I just want to learn from you. And I just think that your firm is so awesome and la, 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 and all that kind of thing. That doesn't really do a lot for me. And I'm not trying to be mean here or rude or whatever. I'm just saying that I think somebody at a certain stage of their game, not just out of college, it should have a better idea of how to sell what their benefits are to hiring me, because I've got people willing to pay me to train them and teach them. Okay. So I'm not, wanting to hire someone and pay them and also be training them, or doing that because they want to be me at some point or other. There's nothing wrong with that, that people want to do that. You just need to know going into it. And my personal philosophy is I don't want to hire somebody who actually wants to be me, because the training isn't cheap. It requires a lot of
Right.
time, a lot of resources. And I mean, really, I think when I first said to Liz that I wanted to really consider hiring somebody because of all the dynamic that was going on and the workload and the things that were happening at the beginning of the year with a lot of the jobs that we have that are very busy. I think she probably was just like dying on the inside, because a lot of the training falls on her to at least have a pretty good idea of what's going on. So if somebody's eyeballing your chair from the very beginning, they may not be the best person for the long haul. You know what I'm saying? And then some people are takers in that view. They're looking at you as a stepping stone to something else. And again, that's not necessarily wrong. If somebody's upfront with me about that, then I'm more likely to say, okay, what can you provide for me for the time period? I am very have hired people, military wives or spouses or girlfriends or whatever, many times over the years, knowing full well they were only going to be there for a certain amount of time. So it's not like I'm not opposed to that. That's how Liz started out, quite frankly. And here she is, I mean, 9 or
Yeah.
10 years later. So I think that is, though, I recognize that this is like, wow, this would be a great person for me to hire for the next 3 years, if that's all it is. Or in some cases, it might be a year, but I've done that with Susan and with the Shannon was like that. And there's been several people, and
Mhm.
it
Oh,
has always
yeah.
been a great relationship. But, I think when you've got somebody that says, I want to shadow you, I want to do all that, that's going to suck more of your energy, y'all, unless that really turns you on. And if it does, more power to you. But for me, it sucks my energy. I never hire interns that are not paid, because I know that I'm going to ask them to do work, and I want to be able to ask them to do work. So that to me is really important. If
Mhm.
you have a different situation or a big school in your area or whatever, an intern might be a great way for them to get experience and for you to give them experience and also credit. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing to do it. We just don't have that kind of a program here. So when somebody interns with us, it's always going to be paid, because I don't want to have that responsibility of fully training them. I just have too much on my plate. I just,
Right.
overall do. I think one of the other things that we have to think about, and Liz, you can speak to this one too, is can you delegate? I mean, are you a good delegator? Like, I will delegate until the cows come home.
Mhm.
Okay. I am a master delegator. I'm also not a micromanager. If I think everything is being done well, I'm going to not even pay attention. Sometimes someone will say, like, but you know about all this. Like, no, I really don't, because I've put that right out. I know you're capable and you're handling it. And so I really haven't been paying that much attention to it. It's only when something is not quite right that then I become a little more of a micromanager. But I do think that being able to delegate is something important. And I think that's something that Liz has struggled with sometimes. I think now that you're remote, though, that's really you are being forced to delegate,
Yeah, I've
right?
had to learn.
Yeah.
It definitely forced the hand for sure, but I think that's it. I really think too, it's made me more keen and aware on the skill set of some of the people on our team who I didn't work with as much beforehand. And I think that what's great about that, and again, this is a sort of growing pain probably for me too, just like professionally, is it's sometimes I think I'm young, and I know I am young, but sometimes I think I'm younger than I actually am. And the relationship between being a manager and kind of growing into that role and being able to like see the younger level in our team really like get excited about doing something new or doing something that they didn't think they could do, or figuring something out that they were challenged by is really satisfying, and that makes me feel more confident to then delegate, because I feel like, okay, if we champion that, we can do this, or we're going to try this out now.
Yeah.
It because it's hard otherwise. Like it's more like I think, okay, well, I don't want the ball to drop, and so I don't have time for the ball to drop, so I don't want to, give away too much in terms of responsibility, but it really has helped me a lot be able
Yeah.
to look at it from a different vantage point.
Yeah, and you've come a long way since I had Jonathan Adler do that recording that said, "Liz, you gotta delegate. Liz, you gotta delegate." I've got that. It's immortalized on YouTube if anybody wants to look for it. Jonathan Adler saying that to Liz, years and years ago when I was really struggling with how to get this woman to actually release some control over it. And I'm not saying she's like an A+ student right now, y'all, about this,
Yeah, I'm
but
still
it's
not
but
perfect
she's
by any stretch.
yeah, but she's getting much much better about it. I think another thing you need to think about is really thinking of and I alluded to this a minute ago, but thinking of a new person, a hire as a capital investment. To me, that is the most important thing. As much as I am no walk in the park to work for, I just got to tell you, but I still value that team so much. I really do. It is what keeps me going back all the time. I really do. Even on the days when we're ready to pull our hair out. And we've had a few of those. And it's just, I still ultimately I get over it, and I just, love having that. So I think you have to talk numbers a little bit and say, can you afford, think about it for 90 days. Okay. So this is the thing for me. Think about it for 90 days. People get so wrapped up and spooled up about it being like some lifelong commitment you're making right off the bat. No, you're not. Now, depending on the state you're in, because every state's different, but like a right to work state or whatever it's called is going to be, you have a 90 days. And I tell people up front, it's no harm, no foul. You may like us, but it not be a good fit. We may like you, but it may not be a good fit. Whatever the case may be, that is how we're going to look at something. And you should look at it that way and say, okay, within 90 days, I'm going to know if this person, if your processes are together, which is a whole nother thing you've got to make sure you have. But if that is the case, then you should be able to know if that person is going to be able to work, to work out. If this is somebody that's going to take things off of your shoulders or be able to add to, the bottom line. So you want to make sure that with that extra set of hands that you can focus on more revenue generating activities. Can you land a client, improve your efficiency, maybe enhance client satisfaction in some way because you're not bogged down with all these admin tasks that really just suck the creativity right out of you. Because I know that's what happens with me, then
Mhm.
you just look at that 90 days and say, okay, I think that I can, I can handle this, I can be that person. I mean, I can see myself doing this, uh, past the 90 days, but don't feel bad if it doesn't work out because, your first hire is not always the easiest thing in the world. And neither is your fifth or your 70th or your 80th or whatever the case may be, wherever we are now. It's never easy, and there's some classic stories that we have for another podcast of, things that have happened. And it's not always me, y'all. Everybody always thinks it's me, but Liz has had a few of her own little instances with people that we've
No, I
hired that have
do
come and
remember
gone.
just one quick story. I do remember there was a girl who we hired who made up this elaborate story about her
Oh,
grandfather passing
yes.
away and her
In
family
Guam.
having this
Yeah.
land, this indigenous land that they were going to be inheriting, and she couldn't possibly come to work the next day. And then Cheryl,
I
spooled
stalked
around the
her.
internet and
Yeah.
found these videos she had posted on her YouTube channel of her like driving around the next town over or something
Yeah.
like that the day
Yeah.
after.
I mean, it was
So
but it
there
was
are
very
duds
elaborate.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there are
It was
duds
not, this was
sometimes in the
elaborate.
mix too.
Yeah, and she was happy. She seemed to be happy with her job. I mean, she
Yeah,
only worked there a couple of months, but she seemed to be happy and
it's
everything
very
was good. And we
strange.
we couldn't figure it out, like what was going on, because we were well vested in her and all that kind of thing. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's there's, I mean, now that I think about it, Liz, there's like the guy that melted down in the living room, and then the gal that, that had been there for like a
Oh, that's
week, and
right.
then another gal that was upstairs, and you said a a word that you probably shouldn't have said out loud, and she was looking at you like you were, had,
The
40
devil
heads or
incarnate.
something, because yeah. So it's kind of fun. I've always been amused by that, because usually I'm the one who put my foot in my mouth somehow or another. And, and we do go over this with people too. When we hire them, we say that this is a crazy place to be. And we're always moving and grooving, and there's lots of, and no 2 days are the same and all that kind of thing. But anyway, also I would say you need to be willing to take a few steps backwards before you take a few steps forward, even if it costs you money. Yes, I am that person who is saying that. It's okay, because I have walked the talk, y'all. I have done this. I have spent money on people. I have made capital investments. I have paid people. I have put aside that money. I've done everything in order to grow. And my team is responsible for that growth. Okay. It is not some, I'm not in a vacuum here in any way, shape, or form. And it's never been that way. So if you hire the right people, even when you kiss a few frogs along the way, ultimately you are going to be growing, and you have to realize that it is an investment. It really is an investment. You have to be willing to pay the person appropriately. And I'm not just talking about competitive salary, but I'm also talking about a other ways to incentivize people. And the first few months, it's a lot of training on you. So you want to try to go in a little bit less so that you can have room for growth for people, ultimately, depending on the market you're in and that sort of thing, because you do have to recognize that there's a lot of training that you put out there. And
Mhm.
all of that I think is really important. And figuring out what motivates people. And a lot of people aren't motivated just by money. I mean, they really aren't. I know I'm not. And so I think that everybody can be treated as an individual, and you can really figure out what makes that person tick, because there's a lot of people that are willing to work with you and say, yeah, okay, you know what, I can help you grow this business. Give me 6 months, and I'm going to start here, and I'm going to be okay with that. But then in 6 months, I want to be here, and if I can do this and this, is that going to be reasonable? I would just like fall over on my chair, if somebody said that to me, because I think that is really smart to think about it that way. So, but you have to also realize that you are going to be, taking a couple of steps backwards potentially, and it may be steps backwards in the sense that if you don't have your processes all together, it may be that you're doing this and you're actually taking a step back in the sense that you're going to be working your butt off. I think that Liz and I probably do work harder, at least Liz does, when we do have somebody new, because we're trying to, make sure that she's trained. And I will tell you, Liz, just, the last couple of days being in the office and everything, there's a certain amount of like, just, I don't know, like a little bit of oomph that a new person brings too. I really
Yeah.
feel it. I feel it in the air at the shop. I feel like this is like really good. Of course, Miles is there too, and we love Miles to death. And so he's always like a ray of sunshine around. But I think I feel like there's just a little bit more, pep in everyone's step, in a way too. So
Yeah.
and I know that there is, in mine, because I'm thinking of finally, we found somebody that is, potentially going to be a really good addition to our team.
Mhm.
What else? I know what I was going to say is also, be able to project your income for a solid 6 months, really know. And that is okay, really important if you're following Cheryl's, deal about flat fees and minimum expenditures and all that. You should have that money on the books. So that's kind of important to me. What else, Liz? Like being willing to listen to new ideas. I love that. That's part of the shot in the arm that I love about hiring somebody new, is because I want to encourage them. And that's the last thing I said to Althea when I left today, Liz, to come and meet you to do this podcast, is I said, if you have ideas based on what you've done before or whatever, bring them on. I love that. I love ideas. I love thinking outside the box. I want to do more kinds of work like this. So maybe you can think about that, because maybe your firm did more of this type of work versus that other. So make sure that you look at somebody as a team member, and make sure you cultivate that culture where people can bring you ideas, because that is
Mhm.
one of the best things in the world to me. That's essential for the long-term growth, I think, about that. What
Yeah.
else, Liz? What else am I missing here in terms of things to know if you are ready?
Well, I think that, to circle back, only because it is, I think, so important, and also because it alleviates the training process in a pretty substantial way, whether it's your first or your fourth hire. The process driven stuff I think is really, really critical, and also really having a good definition of what you want to see happen in that first block of time. So, we do it
Yes.
based on a 90-day, window, and we kind of put a little reminder on the calendar there to check in because we all know time flies. But to be aware of what's happening, of what you're dedicating to training so that you can really assess better what it is that you're either gaining from the hire or what you're sort of realizing is actually going to be more the
Mhm.
rhythm with them involved, because I think it can be so easy to, and we often will do this, to want to make it work, and so you start accommodating and you don't want to
Oh,
get to a
yeah.
point where you're
Good
over
point.
accommodating.
Good point.
But at the same time, being conscientious about it and being aware about it, I think there's so many things in business where that is an important detail, and being able to kind of remove yourself from the day to day and see that is a big part of it. So,
Yeah.
when it comes
Yeah.
to the person themselves, I think be open minded. But when it comes to sort of being strategic on the interior of your business, just really be attuned to what is this person actually contributing once they're there.
Yeah, exactly. And be very and get people goals. I'm big on the goals, big on the goals. Here's what we want you to be able to accomplish in the first 90 days. Here's what we want to be able you to be able to accomplish in the first, 180 days and that sort of thing. And you also have to be prepared for that acceleration of time spent at work that this is going to be energy for you. I mean, it really is. It's going to be energy, and it's good energy, and you can make it good energy if you look at it right and you are embracing the what somebody else is bringing to the table, but ultimately it is going to help you. Okay, because the only way that I can be here talking to you on a podcast or to be coaching TDP and to do my one-on-ones and things like that, the only way I can do that is because of my team. That is a gift that they have been able to give me, because they are able to take care of the day to day and the things that I am not necessarily always going to be, on top of it. So, but there's still, going to be more of an acceleration, at least in somebody like with Althea. Not so much for me; it'll be more of an acceleration for Liz, because and Libby, really, as the management team, that they're going to be having to deal with everything that is going on, with that. But ultimately, it is not a step back, but it's just this essential part of this path to growth and scaling. I mean, it just really is. And the last thing before we get into our damn good truth for the day, Liz, is I think we ought to be honest about one thing. Be ready for this love-hate relationship you will have with having employees in a team, okay? It is all, and with your boss, and Liz can start say that, and with the boss too, it's the same thing, but it's all of this, it's definitely an emotional, time, and full of, highs and lows and joys and frustrations and all of that sort of thing. You're going to make mistakes. They are going to make mistakes. I mean, really, this is all, you might as well just go ahead and write it down right now, because that is what is going to happen. But you really, it's the quantity. I mean, the quality over quantity is what I want to say about hiring too, is that making sure that if you have to push yourself a little more to hire the right person, then do that. It took me way too many years to realize that, y'all. Big mistake on my part. Big mistake. I thought quantity was better. That's why we have a more solid team with less people now than we might have had 10 years ago. So definitely the quality is so much more important. And that's why when somebody does, come across our doorstep like Althea or some of the other people, even Miranda Gabrielle, we did not, if you think about it, Liz, we were not planning on hiring two people. We were looking for one. And the reason we hired both of them is because they were quality people. They were quality people that we thought could really add to our team, and they absolutely have. So that is really important to realize that, but you also have to acknowledge the mixed feelings because it all comes with the territory. It is not a sign of weakness, or anything else when you are working at, getting used to being a boss or having more people or all the things that are going to happen with that. It's part and parcel of it, that there are going to be days where you're going to go, can I fire myself? I just want to fire myself. I want to fire. I don't want to, I just like, no more. I don't want to deal with people. And if you know that you don't have the bandwidth for that, and it's funny because I am such a sucky manager, but yet I will tell you that having a team is one of my joys in life. It really is. And so, that's a little bit of an oxymoron. And I'm not necessarily a people lover in general. I'm not an extrovert that gets my power from people. I definitely do not, but yet I love having a team. I love all of that it represents. So I think, to me, that is something that you have to accept, that there is going to be a little bit of the ups and downs of that. It's not always going to be a walk in the park. That's for sure. So Liz, do you have anything else to add before we get into our damn good truth for today?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. Just like you said, it's a little good with the bad and bad
Yeah.
with the good.
Yeah.
And you just have to be open to it.
Liz tries to fire herself sometimes, but it just doesn't work. I don't know. There's nobody accepting that resignation letter or anything. I mean, I'm telling you, there are days that it's like that. Okay. But it's, overall, I just, if you're not looking at me, because I don't know if Stephanie's even putting these out there, the actual video, but if you're not looking at me, I've got a big smile on my face, because the truth is, I really do love my team. I recognize that, even though, and again, I'm tough. There's a lot. I demand excellence in myself, and I demand excellence in other people. And I think, honestly, even when people are probably cursing me behind my back, they recognize that that's what I want, is the best for them. And I want the best for the outcome in general. And that sometimes that means you're pushing people to excel in areas that perhaps they're not quite ready to be there, but it's worth it. It's worth it in the end. It truly is. And it's going to help you run a more sustainable business and poised for growth for the future. So here's our damn good truth for today. Hiring a team challenges you to enhance your skills as a business owner. And it is just like implementing flat fees and project pricing. Really, these kinds of strategies help elevate your business to a level where this sustainable growth and scalability are achievable. Okay. It is really the only way to get past a certain point, unless you are just killing yourself. It's just key here, though, to make a thoughtful decision and avoid rushing into it, especially if you're in a stressful time or you're really crazy busy. Take the time to research and analyze, what you need to pay, what the kind of person you're looking for. Make sure that all your own house is in order, as much as order as it can be, before taking this leap, and you are going to discover the right solutions and the right people. But on the same token, be open to that right person that comes along. Okay. I have talked to so many designers over the years that have just said, I just wasn't looking for somebody, but this person came along, and oh my God, she just blew me away. Can I do this, Cheryl? And I am going to answer almost every single time, yes, you can do it. What is the thing? Build it and they will come, or something like that. I don't know. I don't know if that's always true, but I'm telling you that I've not had anybody yet tell me that it hasn't been a good thing for them. It really haven't, in terms of when they really have felt like this is the right person for them. So anyway, that's the damn good truth. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and you will join us for the next one. Thank you for being here.
Bye, y'all.
Until next time, stay bold, stay inspired, and keep embracing your bag girl spirit. If you've enjoyed today's show, head over to join the community at damngooddesigner.com to continue the conversation and sign up for our newsletter.